Okay, continuing. So, Ashita Sawhney. For Ashita, design is problem solving with functional aesthetics, where the idea is intuitive and interactive, as it engages the audience. Studying these creative complexities has guided Ashita's process to explore traditional crafts with emerging technologies. So Ashita will be presenting, will give her talk, Healing Folds. Ashita, it's your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Gerardo, for the introduction. My personal connection with origami started in 2019 as a research project for my master's program. I reached out to Sue Ann at Origami Houston to learn and practice the art. During the first meeting with the group, I observed how well integrated and community building outreach that origami offered. Sue introduced me to Joan Son, an amazing Houston-based origami artist. Under Son's guidance, folding transitioned between objects and installation. Sue introduced me to Joel Stern with LA Pop and Gerardo. This started my discipline practice with origami. As a graphic designer, my research project is supported with integrated in traditional crafts, just like Gerardo said, and in digital softwares. Some of you have seen this in my projects. I'm going to showcase some of them to you right now, and you might remember seeing them during some of our meetings. This was my first project that I'd worked on, and this is something that we'll be working on in a more elaborate way today. This was using paper to fold and create a type anatomy. My second project was inspired by all the tessellation meetings that we had, and I used tessellations as a movement to showcase migration in a project that I was working on. And if you remember, this was based on augmented reality, and I'm hoping you can see some shadow right here with the tessellation. And the people movement was based on census data graphics on where and how people were moving to. Here's another example. I also worked with origami in terms of the diagram space that we explore. So one of my projects right here was showcasing origami in its artwork creation. There's something very important that I learned from our community, that you have extended your time and resources in many unique ways to educate, create, as we learn from each other. Our in-person community and city-based groups have grown into a larger and global virtual space through this pandemic, and I'm grateful for this opportunity with Foldeas. Gerardo, I'm going to share my screen. And let me know when you can see it.
Of course, go ahead. Yeah, we can see it.
As part of this presentation, this is a three-part presentation. My first part is where I'm showcasing the importance of origami when it comes to art therapy and how a proposal would work. Second part is reviewing some samples, and the last part is based on an activity. And as I'm walking you through this presentation, I will be reading through my notes. This presentation focuses on the important role of origami within healthcare system. How creative arts is embedded in nurturing care within the healthcare initiatives. According to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, public healthcare infuses quality and performance improvement method in health departments. I will briefly discuss the initiative, challenge, response, design, and planning. What are public health initiatives? According to the National Conference of State Legislative, Public Health and Prevention, these efforts include initiatives to educate public about healthier choices, facilitating healthier lifestyles through community support, that's something that we very strongly have within our origami community. During this pandemic, a global healthcare challenge led to initiatives towards cleanliness and social distancing. This challenge was simplified to a basic hygiene practice: wash our hands for 20 seconds. We all have our hand washing songs. Research showed us that it is the participating community that makes a program a success. The first step is to understand the community's need. This study may be over a period of time, age group, socioeconomic condition, cultural environment, geographical areas, and many more criteria to evaluate. Research conducted by Creating Healthier Communities, Arts and Public Health here in America identifies 5 public health challenges in the United States. These are collective trauma, racism, social exclusion and isolation, mental health, and chronic disease. I'll explain these briefly. Life events may lead to short-term or long-term trauma that affect the psychological, emotional, or physiological well-being of a patient. Collective trauma is this experience affecting a larger group of people, and usually a collective community. It may be also due to poverty, like homelessness or natural disasters like hurricanes and tsunamis. Discrimination based on color addresses lack of proper healthcare services, educational resources, and job opportunities due to race. Restricted and limited resources to a section of our society due to their location, demographics, or ability is social exclusion and isolation. Mental health may be affected due to financial, personal, or social issues. Chronic diseases affect patient, physical, or mental health. Those affected may be living together in a care facility or as a community. When working on a proposal for a program, and in this case, we are focusing towards more origami programs, after a program is drafted, the next step is funding followed by implementation. There are local, state, and national level funding to support these programs. Corporates may also initiate public programs. Collaborations, installation, implementation, and future projects may add life to a program. By integrating arts, the healthcare initiative open as environment to support therapies and stimulate mind and body healing. As part of an artist group, G5, based here in Houston, we have a common humble expression amongst ourselves to address work-life balance. It's okay. As one says this, as humbly, as lovingly, as grounded, and as patiently, you feel a weight lift off. This is the power of words. My first major project with origami was funded by Catherine McGovern College of the Art at University of Houston. Pandemic, remote, isolation, and social distancing soon became our new normal, where our personal and professional spaces overlapped. There are 3 aspects of an art making project: pre-art making, art program, and post-art making. In the planning of art therapy process, the pre-art making connects with the community. The art program is a creative experience. And lastly, the post-art making analyzes the results. This collaborative effort enhances the recovery process and records the physical and emotional well-being. Programs offer creative interventions through art, dance, drama, and music. This lays the role of origami in art therapy. According to the World Health Organization, depression is a leading cause of ill health and disability worldwide. So what is something that we can do together to work towards a therapy program where we support each one of us and our extended community? We practice origami to solve a problem or for the simple joy of folding. Healing Folds is a public health initiative to help participants transition from clinical to non-pharmacological therapy. The key criteria for this program are non-pharmacological alternatives, cognitive stimuli, audience ability, active participation, location-specific, and lead initiative.
1 second. No, sorry about that. Where is that? Okay. Sorry about that.
So how does the proposal, the step-by-step guide to a proposal, things to keep in mind as we are working on the program itself and the participating audience?
I remind everyone, please, to not to use the microphone if there's too much noise. Ashita, I muted you as well. Would you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Gerardo. Coming back to the proposal. So when we are planning a program like this, so what are the step-by-step to keep in mind, keeping audience as well as participants during a therapy program? Who are our audience? They are of all age groups, from children to adults to seniors. Who is our community? It is the active participation of the community. The location can be in person as a care facility, or it could be a virtual program as well. The initiative here is not limited to Healing Folds. It is extended to all types of art, dance, drama, and creative arts, where it helps the participant overcome the situation that they are in. The duration may be 2 hours or 3 hours. The material may be paper and fabric, and today I'll be exploring both as samples, and this is based on the participants' width of the paper. The grid will depend based on that. The activity is folding. The therapy is a cognitive ability, and the facilitators are us, the origami artists. Time management is integral on how to plan a program like this. Set within a care facility, Healing Folds is an in-person or a virtual plan for once a week. Organizers should carefully select paper, here the type of paper and the format, which is the length and the width of the paper itself, and or fabric, which is the ribbon itself, keeping in mind the audience's dexterity. Just like a discipline practice, a 2 to 3 hour activity is set as a weekly event over a 6-month time period. Shorter or longer durations are offered and are equally effective. Here is a breakdown on how to plan a project like this. Once a week meeting spanned over a month for a 6-month time period is a 24-day commitment. Likewise, a 3-hour over 4 times a month over 6 months is a 72-hour commitment. And when we start to time ourselves with a time and a time deadline on the healing process, this is where the results will start to come into place. The next step is to understand how to do the folding. Here on the example, I have a grid mat board, then I also have a grid. The width is dependent on the material that you're using. The folding type anatomy is based on grid construction. And in design space, when we are designing type and fonts, grid is our base criteria to move ahead with. Once you start to get familiar with the grid itself, the grid is expandable. You can widen it, you can enlarge it in height, and your type design can be more expanded, or it can be more condensed typeface. So that's a flexibility once you start to understand how the grid works. The grid right here is a 3-column by 5 row. This adds clarity during the activity. Most folds are a 45-degree angle. So we are familiar with our valley and mountain folds, a cupboard fold that's coming in. As we are working in the example that you're looking at, you can see the 45-degree angle fold. You can see the mountain and valley. You're not limited to mountain and valley only. So you're not limited to mountains or valleys. You can actually switch these around to make the type form look different. And there are some angle rotations which are at 22.5-degree angle. And the diagonal letter forms will be different. Folding connects with the participants as it reconnects them with their life's precious moments. There are a few examples that we'll look at. These could be based on a color that you're working at. It could be a theme that you're looking at, or it can be a time, moment, or a holiday that you are that is approaching. Here are some other choices. You could choose a letter. Now, these are affirmative words that add more meaning to someone's experience. So here I have different type of word selection, starting from the letter A. Here is a theme. So this is something that can be added as a connection. So what are these words that connect with a certain idea? That's one direction to take ahead. The themes include simple to engaging with cultural and seasonal identity. Communication is an integral part of this program and the first step to engage the community. The outcome through the program, the participants' physical and mental well-being is documented. Research shows that participants are empowered with self-esteem. They show better communication abilities and active engagement. As the participants learn these folds, they soon become independent in creating their own art stories. This fulfills their art-making experience. As part of the proposal, the art is displayed in a community foyer as an ongoing work of art installations. The program invites active and virtual participation by family and caregivers. So what we create, there is a next phase to showcase and display this in other spaces. I'm going to stop share my presentation right here. What I'm showcasing next is the book, which has a grid structure to showcase how the letter forms are folded. Then I have some samples that we'll be looking at. I'm going to, Gerardo, I'm going to switch to the other camera. Give me 1 second.
Okay, 1 second, and let me spotlight your other camera. Oh, it's turned off. Activate the camera, Ashita. Okay.
Do you see it?
Yes, I do. There. I think it's all once again upside down.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I had to disconnect it too. All right, back to it now. So here's one of the examples that you saw in during the presentation, and this one is using the ribbon itself. And let me just bring in slightly closer so you can start to see the grid. It's on canvas, and I've actually drawn it with the pencil, measuring the width of the ribbon itself. Just making sure that it's on the frame. All right, here I have the book where I've documented all the folding activities. So I'm going to briefly go through the book itself. The first one that I want to showcase is the letter form L, which is the simplest form of the folding structure. So you see the 3 column and the 5 rows. The length is dependent on the letter form. So depending on your grid, the length will vary based on every letter form as you're folding it. And at the end, so that's your starting point. In case of L, how I fold it. So I start this way, I fold it to 45 degree, and this is where I trim it. The folding instructions in the book are right here, and this is the simplest form of folding the letter. Since I'm at L, let me showcase another simple one, which is the letter form C. So I'm starting at the center of the row, of the column, right here on the second column. I fold 45 degrees, I come down, I fold 45 degrees, and I come in right here, and that's where I trim it. And here are the instructions on how to fold it. So since I'm at the C, now we understand how the basic folding is. So when we are looking at the D, in this case, I'm not starting at the top, I'm starting at the bottom. Note that this is a basic folding instruction, but how you write the word or how you write the letter form or how you prefer to fold can be unique to your experience. So you do not have to follow the exact structure. The only thing that you must keep in mind is the direction that you're folding as the letter is formed. So for the D, I actually start at the bottom. I go upwards, fold 45 degree, go to my third column, fold down. And on the last column, I fold it back and then come in right here, and that's where I trim it. What you see, the transparency is what's showcasing where every fold is. And the instructions for D are right here. Right. Jump to E. There we go. So the instructions are very clear. And let me move in closer. So I want to make sure you can see this. On the document right here, I'm not sure if that's visible, but I have guidelines to where it's folded. But here, the length is based on what the actual length would be. And this is going to be unique and different to each one of your folding. Here's letter form E. E, F, number 3, 8, they're all the similar way on how they are folded. The interesting aspect, once you start to fold is, and you get familiar with the grid, you do not have to start at the rightmost corner. You can actually create your own style by starting at the center of the column. So it'll create a much more unique way on how we are seeing the fold. So as you come in down here, this is where the overlaps happen. So I have a 45 degree angle. I'm folding a cupboard fold right here. So that's a half valley for me. Sorry, yeah, a half valley. And then I come in right here and then I valley fold down. You can switch valleys and mountains based on the type of paper you're using. So if you have a textured paper, or if you have a transparent paper, or if you have a color on 2 different sides of the paper, that's another way to look at the design itself. Let's look at the letter form G in this case. And as I was talking about the letter E itself, so if I don't start it at the corner on the top right of my third column, when I'm starting it in the second column, it gives a different approach to the letter form itself. So here again, I have 45 degree going all the way, but I'm ending it right here. You could, if you have a textured paper from one side or a color switch on the other side, you can actually extend this all the way right here. So that's unique ways. Once you get familiar with the grid, you create your own samples and you create your own type design as you're working with it. Here's an etch. So I'm starting from the top. I'm going all the way to the bottom, coming back up. So there's an overlap. That's how you see the two colors. So you understand that there is a flap, the fold that's going back up 180. Then I have a 45 fold here, coming back right exactly at half of my column grid. My grid is an odd number grid. Note that I have a 3 column and a 5 row grid. So I'm using my center row when I'm folding the letter form. If I switch this fold to the second row, or if I switch it to the bottom row, the second last, the fourth row, the type design will look different. So as you're creating these folds, it'll create more interesting, unique forms. With the letter I do both ways. You can start at the third column or you can start at the first column. So in one of the samples that I'll showcase, I have it starting on the first column. As I come to the second column, I fold down backwards, and that's how I end it. I'm going to briefly go through the letters that you can see. The diagonals M and W are something more unique to work with. So here, when you're working with either diagonal or M and W, observe the angle on the curve that will come in at the top edges. And then as you come down, when you're folding it up, it's all working at half the fold, which is if it's 45, it becomes 22.5. And then it becomes 12.25. So that's the variation. Those are the angle rotation as we work with it. Same applies to N. O and 0 are quite interesting because your starting point, in my case, I have a starting point right here at the bottom corner on the right side. And I lock these. So the first square is also locked into a triangle. And as I fold all the way to the end, the last square is also folded to lock it. Let me show you what that looks like right here. So this is where I lock the fold. The P and R look similar. So the R would follow the same half fold and then come down and fold. Q shows you exactly what O and 0 would look like. So that's the angle where I haven't folded it up, but I folded it on the opposite direction. So that gives a slight edge to the letter form Q. So that's the R. S is one of my favorites. I like the way how it turns around, and it actually S and 8 are something that you can start off in getting basic understanding of the fold itself. So I'm starting right here at the second column. And as I'm coming along, it's making its unique shape. So along the curve itself, it's a very geometric flow. If I extend this all the way, so if my paper is extended all the way right there, or it's extended to the other side, those are some interesting formations to create. We are at T. This is another basic simple one to fold. So A is exactly the flip opposite of the letter form V, but A has a half fold that comes back up again. That's the opposite of M. X and K are quite interesting because you have multiple overlaps happening, and the overlaps are right here at the joint form. So that's something to keep in mind for. So if you have certain words that are using the letter X. And since I'm talking about the X, it'll be interesting to see what the fold structure looks like. Here I have the Y. You can see that I start off at the top corner, come in halfway. So note that on my center square, I am folding it halfway up towards the right corner. So my corner is the first row and the last column. and then all the way in an angle. So all the diagonal letter forms are not flat at the base of the grid. With the Z again, I enjoy the starting at the center of the column instead of starting at the beginning. So that creates an interesting formation of the letter form. And I'll quickly go through, showcase what the other letter forms are like. So these are basic, simple ones. That's the 2, which is the flip of the S. That's the 3, flip of the E. 4, if you flip it, it becomes a lowercase h. 5 is a flip of the S and the 2. So different ways on exploring the letter form. 6 is a flip of the P or a lowercase b, and same will apply to 9. The 7 and 8. This is the most unique one. So if we find time today, maybe we'll fold the letter 8 itself as well. But we'll start off with the basic ones. And 9 here too. For the punctuations, I've included very basic ones. So there is the period itself, which is just a 1 square grid. We have the comma, which can be used as an apostrophe and as quotes as well. The exclamation and the question mark. Let me showcase some examples that I've folded that we can see today. Here is an example of, this is based on Kami, and what I have here is a print on one side and flat color on the other side. And observe that I have extended the letter form on the S as well as on the F on both sides. These are based on the color itself. So I've brought in some fun elements. And in each one of them, what I've done is I've explored the design differently. So if I'm folding, how I'm folding the letter E, if my valley and mountains are changing, or on the I where I've switched, so I'm exploring it differently because I have a diagonal letter form. So these are quite intuitive when you're starting to fold it. Because I have an open area in the type design with L, I felt that the I can fold on the other side. And they're quite empowering words as well. So when you're choosing your word form, the letter selection, depending on the audience that you're working with, or even if you're creating this for yourself and your loved ones, these are some directions to keep in mind. You could play with either a letter. So what are some letter forms that start off with a letter? For example, A. If you're starting off with a theme, you want to do something, let's say everything that's color red. That's what you want to explore. Or you want to create just names, your family member names that you want to explore. So that's another example. Here's another one. So what I've done is I've broken the word in a way that depending on my paper width here itself, I've broken it up. So I'm not using hyphenation because it's a creative space as I'm exploring the design itself. And here I have another one. So how I'm using the space is also based on the paper that I'm working with. So if my paper is very patterned and colorful, I'm working with solid colors, but you're most welcome to bring in patterned papers as well. If you're working with Kami today, you can bring in pattern Kami or double-sided colors that'll create that variation. Before we get on to the activity, what I'm going to do is showcase the grid itself. On how I've created the grid. So what I have here, and I want to be sure that you can see this. I have different grids. We'll start off with one letter, then I have, so there's the one letter grid. The 2, the 3. You do not need all the grids. I'm just keeping these. When I make the letter forms, I'm going to place these right here on top of this. All you need is a single grid. Your grid is going to depend on the width of the material that you're using. So if you're using a kirigami paper, or if you're using a ribbon, or if you're cutting the letter size paper or a kami paper, what you have to do is keep in mind that the column and the row match the grid that you're using. Let's give you a few minutes to create a grid and maybe get the material that you're working with. Gerardo?
Sure, no problem. Okay, so this is now the time. If you don't have with you either the strips of paper or you haven't drawn the grid, it's now or never.
All right. What I'm using for folding, I have 3 different materials today. I have a paper bag that I have cut, and each time I'm folding, I will be marking it so you can see clearly. I have a ribbon. So if anyone's using fabric or a ribbon, you could have a paper ribbon. And then I have 2 colors of kirigami paper that I'm using. So whichever you're using, and if you are cutting or tearing a letter form or a kami into strips, just keep that in mind as you're working with. And I think we have time to fold a few words. Today, I'm going to start off with the first letter, that is L, and then the next one I'll go to is E. L will give you a basic understanding on how to work around the grid. E will help you understand how to fold between the third row and the second column, so understanding where that fold is. E will help you understand F, R, P, and the numbers as well. And then we will fold an H. We will fold a few diagonals, and then we'll start to form the words from there on. Gerardo, I'm going to move on to the screen right here.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Right, I'll be right here. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So if it helps, that is the grid that I'm working with. And that should be much more clearer for everyone to see now, hopefully.
Much better.
Yeah, and I see it's slightly off, so that should be good. Okay. All right. And right now I'm using a plain color that I have right here. So depending on if you have a pattern, you can choose the one that you want, want to be able to see more clearly, should be your vertical length that you're looking at. So I'm starting off on my first left top corner, first column and first row, that's a square. As I'm on the last one, I am just going to fold it right here and then trim it. So I'm folding it at the bottom, most of the first row, and I'm going to trim it right here at the last column. And it should have been a good idea to say that we would need scissors or a cutter knife. So I apologize. Sorry about that. I have mine right here. So that's my letter form L. Sorry, I see my hand was overlapping it. So here's L right here. Note that I did give a 45-degree fold on my first row, first column, last row. And I'm going to move this out. I'm going to fold that again. This time I'm using a craft paper. And I'm starting off with the letter I. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Okay, thank you. I see a few okays. So you can start off from the first corner. So you can have a left start, or you can start off the other way as well. And it will also be a good idea to place the letter I, the grid right here too. So I'm going to, each letter that I'm folding, I'll try and keep the folding instruction on the side so you can see it too. There we go. So on my diagram right here, I'm starting on the right, but I'm doing a modification so you can see how it looks the other way too. And I'm going to bring that into the frame so you can see both. So starting from the first left, on my second row, I'm going to give it a 45-degree turn. So my turn is right here. That's my first turn. This is my second column. As I fold along, on my bottom row, I'm going to, so observe that I'm starting on the right in this case, and I'm going to the opposite direction. And that since here I'm starting on the left, the idea is to go to the opposite direction towards the right. And on my last row, I'm going to turn towards the right. On my column width, I'm going to come in back and fold it on the opposite direction, right here. And I'm going to cut it right at the beginning of my column. So you have two variations of the I. Here I have one, here I have the other one, and both are fine. I use both the variations because depending on the letter form that I have, like in the example of the one that I used right here, because I had an open space happening with the letter form L, and I had a diagonal letter form. So those are some things to keep in mind as you're making those words. I'm going to go into the next letter, which is the E. And here I'm starting off with the extreme right variation. So I'm starting off, you can start off on the extreme column on the right, or you can start off in the center. So depending on how you would like to proceed ahead with. In this case, I'm starting right here on the third column. And on my first column, I have a 45-degree angle. Note that the 45-degree angle rotation that you're doing, you can do both. You can do a valley, or you could do a mountain, and both are fine. It's the word that you're creating. It'll look more unique as you're folding them, even if it's a flat color, or same color on both sides, or if it's kami, different color, so you have white and the other color on sides, or if you have different colors, or if you have a pattern. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm folding it into a mountain, so you can see a variation. So if I do a mountain, maybe I want to do a mountain across all my folds that I'm working along. As I am on my second row at this point, I need to do another 45-degree angle, and I'm going to come half a way into my second column. Observe that I tried to match both my folds in the same direction. And let me show you the opposite, so that will help you understand what the letter form is going to look like. So here I have, so that's a variation to create. I'm turning back on my second column halfway through. Now I can turn right here. So that is the center area for the letter form E. And I'm coming back onto my first row, giving it another 45-degree angle. And moving downwards to the length side of the letter E. Note I have the consistency of the design on how the paper folds. On the last turn, again, it's a 45-degree angle.
Could you repeat that center, please?
Yeah, sure. Geeta-ji, at this point. So when I folded, my first fold was a vertical fold. My second fold was a horizontal going towards the center of the letter. And my third fold is halfway on the square. So I'm going to move the paper. If that's my center square, I am holding it at the half of the center square. So I'm not using the full square, but you can use the full square as well. You can even go all the way across. It is how you're styling your font, or you're styling the letter. So right here at the center, I'm going back. Then I have again a 45-degree angle. I'm going along the length of the first column. And then lastly, which is my last fold, is a 45-degree angle going towards the right. Note that right here, to maintain this the design, I am giving it, I'm making sure that all my folds match. And right here at the end, I'm just going to trim it out. And let me show you what it looks like from the other side. And if I change the direction, so if I change the folds all together, so I'm just making them opposite of each other. And I'm doing that to every fold. So the focus becomes different. Here we see the center fold differently. We see the top and bottom differently. Hazel, I know you have the widest of the paper width that we have. So I'm going to go very slow with that. Let me know how it's coming along.
I'm being a coward.
No, that's perfectly fine. It would be fun to, if you remember the big heel that I had at the show, that was an entire width of craft paper, which is like 24 inches wide. So we were able to fold it through the height of the gallery.
I'm going to be honest. I very quickly made little ones.
I was hoping to see big ones from you.
Well, I'm going to make a big one and take it back to the shop. And the lady that gave me this massive roll, I'm going to make one with her name on it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's one of the ideas, that we make names. I'm going to make the letter H at this point. So that'll give you an idea on how are we turning around when it's reversing on the height itself. So I'm starting off with the first column itself all the way to the bottom, going back up halfway. So this is my center row. I am doing a 45-degree turn at the center row. And when I'm on my third column, right here, I'm doing a 45-degree angle in the opposite direction. Once you start to get into the understanding of where the angle rotation is, and it's all right to do the 45-degree in the incorrect way of the letter form, it'll allow you to explore what the letter looks like. So here,
Ashita, can you use half a square?
Yes.
Does that work?
Yes, I will be using those too.
Especially on a corner when you turn.
Yes.
Like the letter Z.
Yes.
For example.
Yes.
It doesn't quite work if you go into the, so you maybe need half a square.
After I finish the edge, I'm going to do a thinner paper and the wider paper, both for the Z itself, so we can see what it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. I can see that's the name of the lady that you're going to go to. So here I'm turning it. So note that because of convenience of the fold, as I'm working on a flat board, I am turning it as a mountain fold in this direction, but I'm going to reverse it so that it matches or complements the way my paper is looking. So observe that when I folded it, it's convenient for me to use a flat top, and that's how I'm folding it. But I can easily go back and just reverse my paper turn the other way. And then right at the bottom, at the base of the grid, I'm coming in right here to do a flat fold all the way up. And again, because it overlaps how the design is looking, I'm going to come in right here and reverse that fold so it matches the structure of the letter that I'm folding. And I'm going to come in right here and trim it. So right there is where I'm trimming it. Oh, I trimmed it more. But that's my letter edge. I just folded the word hi. On request from Hazel, we're going to start to fold the letter Z, and then I'll come back to the other diagonal words as well. So here you have two choices. You can actually start at the first column, first row, or you can start at the second. That's a design variation to create, just like for S as well. So I'm starting here at the that's my first column. This is my second column. So I'm starting at my second column. And as I give the rotation, it's not a 45-degree exact. Note that it's going to be at an angle. And I'll show you both what happens at 45 degrees. So when I do a 45-degree, so that's an exact 45, I do not come to the corner. Let me bring that back in. So I'm not exactly at the corner. That's a variation to create. So I'm going to turn my paper in a way that I have the angle at the corner of the paper itself. And that's where I'm folding it. Now this is where the 45 changes to 22.5 or a 12.5, but in diagonals, it's slightly different as well. And right here, what you have to do is make sure that you are matching the height of your last column. So that's what you're matching. So when I rotate it and I turn my paper, I want to make sure that it's starting at the top of the last row, which is right here. That's where the turn is. And when I turn it, that's where I'll be cutting it. So I'm going to leave it like this for you to see. So that's for the Z. But what if we had different paper widths, and if we are using thinner papers as well?
Thank you very much.
Of course.
I have to say, I like the bar at the top going right across.
All the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's personal taste.
Yeah, and those are variations to make as you are folding, you know, depending on what the word itself is. I can see what Gitaji has right there. That's super awesome. Yeah, you're halfway through. Yeah, so, yeah. Oh, I see energy over there.
You can see my
Smriti right there. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, it's a very amazing and very nice trick to fold and all the words. Really, I impress. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's Sabira.
H also.
Right? Yeah.
And
yeah.
this is the Z.
Z. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And H.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, I see Shireen. That's Francine, right? Yeah. And see how innovative we are becoming. Yeah, like you're using a tape to hold all of the pieces together. And
I just glued it on there.
Yeah.
I just glued them on there because I wanted them to stay together.
That's right. Yeah. And that's how, like, when I'm folding and putting them, you can either use a double side tape or let me see how you can. So this one's using just a double side tape. How do we get that? But you can see it. I really like that. So you got the S, M, E, B. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's a Dutch word, so may not make sense to you.
No. Would you like to explain what the word means? Is it a name?
It means to forge, forging.
Forging. Oh.
But just a word on my mind. So
because my name is start from S, so I make S also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I cheated a little. This ran short, the strip ran short, so I cut off the top part. I got a smaller each. That's okay.
Yeah.
I cut off the top part instead of the bottom. To make it equal. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that you have a pattern paper as well, right?
Yes. Yes, that's right. So that looks good.
I'm going to fold a letter A, and this time, so some of the variations to look at. So I'm using a very thin paper, and my grid can change based on this. And as we're working together, I'm just going to draw the grid right here. And it's just a rough. I'm not using any rulers. I'm just going to make sure it matches the size that I'm working with so that it helps. So I've got my 3 columns right here, and I'm working with.
That's tiny.
I hope it does. Oh, thank you so much. It's a pretty rough grid. Now I can see my grid more clearly. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I've got 1, 2, and 3. So you don't have to have like the perfect elements that you're working with. In this case, I'm using just the mat board. I think I shouldn't have used the mat board right here. I'm going to move that out. And I have my grid right here that I'm going to use. So that should be clearly visible. Thank you, Gerardo. So I'm working with the letter A this time. I'm going to start off with the corner base, and let me bring that in. Right here. So observe that I'm starting at the corner. So it starts right here at the tip. And I have a slight rotation angle as I'm working with. What I am keeping in mind is that the top apex is exactly flat based on the center. So right here is where I will be folding it back up. And as I come in towards the bottom, I want to make sure if there was any changes, you want to make sure it's exactly at the starting bottom corner of the last square, and the angle matches the one on the left side as well. So this is where I'm going to rotate it back up. Once rotated, my next step is to give the 45-degree angle right here. The 45-degree angle is going to make sure that I come into half of the square on my 4th row and 2nd column. That's where I'm folding this. And as I fold it, I want to make sure to keep this gap intact. That shows you can continue to keep it this way as well. So that creates an interesting variation to the letter form as you're creating them. But right here, I'm going to trim it. You can trim it straight, which is 90 degrees to match the paper itself. Or if you want to create a variation, like here, I have the angle. So the 45-degree is going in an angle. That's another thing to keep in mind. That's my letter A right there. Let's fold a B, and then I'll show an O as well. So I'm using a different color this time. Hopefully this comes out much more clearer. On the B, I'm starting at the base. So right here at the top corner, I'm going to go 45 degrees, then 45 degrees back up. So it's most 45 degrees, but the trick is right here at my center square is where I go halfway back up and then come back down. So I'm starting right here at the base. (45-degree). 45-degree right here. And I'm not changing the variation right now because I'm going everything that's folding forward. Once you have the basic fold, then you can actually start to change the orientation of each fold as you like it. Halfway on the square is when I'm folding it back. (45 degrees). (45 degree), and then trim right there. As I'm trimming it, you can choose to bring the overlap back again on how you want the letter forms to look like. Let's do an O. So you can see how it locks itself in. And then we'll do a K or a Y. That'll be easier to understand how the folds look like.
You do an X because does it need two strips?
Okay. No, everything is one strip. All the letters are one strip. On the O, what's important is, and I'm going to use the B to showcase the edge of the O. Both the corners are locked in. So I have a triangle coming in here and a triangle coming in here. And that's how the O locks itself. And on the Q, you would just do the last triangle in the opposite direction. So you can see that variation. Let's look at the K and the X and Y. So they'll be the similar fold. Note I'm starting at the bottom. You could start at the top. Both function look fine. Here, K and X might be the longest strip, but I think I should be able to work with the letter size. This is an 8.5, so I should be able to fold it with this. So I'm starting at the bottom, holding it at the top, coming halfway right here to my third square on the first row, first column. Right here, I have an angle. It is almost a 22.5, a reference point. So it's at the center right here. So if that's my center, this is where I'm folding it, and it's going slightly lower right here. So 12.5 and 22.5 are your go-to angles. The key is, as you're folding it, you're going towards your last top corner on your grid. So right here, that's where my grid is, wherever it touches. So if it's touching right here, or if you want to extend it on one of my fabric ribbon folds, here's what I did with the K. So you see the grid more clearly now, and these are ribbons that I used. It's on a canvas. So as I'm folding it right here, I'm going all the way, sorry, I'm trying to see on both cameras, right here on the first row, last column square. And I've just extended the ribbon all the way just to create a variation. So on my last grid, right here, I'm going to fold it backwards all the way to where I started off with that fold right here. And then at this point, you're going to fold it alongside of the curve right here. So your key is to match a 90-degree angle right there, which is it's matching your length and it's matching a 90-degree angle right here. Let me come in slightly more in. And then you can either trim it or extend it the way you like. Let's look at the X that you
Does
said.
it look like the K that you're showing on your
Because I'm halfway below it. So let me come back right up. you could turn it the other way. So here you can turn the angle rotation the other way. So some variations to create. Another variation to create. Let's look at the X. So I'm starting at the first square. From the edge right here, this is where I'm going back up. At the center square right here, this is where the folds will converge to the opposite direction. So guided by the grid itself. Note that it is at halfway point. And then going back up from here. That's the X.
It's very simple.
We can look at the Y as well. So it's the same logic as the X itself. So here, when you're turning around, you can do the direction exactly the same way or the opposite way. So I'm starting at the top, just like I did for the X. At this point, halfway right here is when I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So right there, and make sure I meet the corners right here. And right here at this point, I'm just going to go in the opposite direction. And then trim it right in the same angle. So it's every angle is a 90 degree. So I'm going to make sure that I have a trim right there.
Which is your 90-degree angle?
No, the angle, where I'm trimming it, that's like a perpendicular. So the paper is always straight. But the angle is either in this case, it'll be the first cut is at, it's not 45. It is a 45, sorry.
It is.
I'm trying to match it with these. That's where I have the angles marked in. Eight is the most complex one. We could try to do the last one as the So that's what we're folding. You can see all the folds right here are at 45 degrees that are coming along. And in this case, I'm starting right here on the right side, but you can start on any side. And it's a practice of how you're actually writing the letter form. And I'll be doing a 45-degree fold every time. Observe that I am starting on one side and I'm going lower. And then when I'll come back up to close the loop. So that's how the S would also be. In case of S, you would actually trim it right here. Coming back up, going through the same 45-degree fold here again. Let me move this up so you can see this. That's where the loop and locks come in. Observe the overlap right here. So the deeper the color tells you how many times it's overlapping. My last turn right here is before the lock. And then while I'll trim it in a 90-degree, but I'll fold it to match the same extension on the other side. And I'll fold both the base paper and the top paper to lock it out. So that's the trim. And as I'm folding it, I want to make sure I fold the same 90-degree. And since every rotation is exactly the width, it's all a square. So when you're folding it as you form it, and I'm going to just sharpen all my creases to form the letter 8. Now observe that it looks like exactly the way it's written. You can always come back and rotate or change your folds based on if you want a continuity of a design that you have, or if you have a continuity of the so if it is you want to reverse the folds depending on the pattern that you have as you're locking it.
We are now at the very last part of the Foldeas session, which it means it's questions and answers. We already have a good list of questions. If time allows it, we will have some more at the end. Let's begin. If I'm not wrong, first question was by Linda. Linda, would you like to make your question?
Sure. Hi there. Thanks for the great workshop. It's very inspiring. I was curious, when you are instructing a class of patients or students, does each participant receive their own book to work from, and how does that happen? They get their own book, their own paper?
Yes, and it's always helpful to provide all the resources, and I should have mentioned that in the presentation as well. So just like this book that I shared while we were folding, there's an entire list on how to fold document. I will soon be uploading it onto my website as well, and to Origami USA, where it's will be easy for anyone to download and use it.
Great, thank you.
while the grid shows a basic folding structure, from a design perspective, you're most welcome to change that variation. The 3x5 grid can be any other formation. So you can make your type forms more wider or condense and taller. And that's the beauty about, the time period of if you're doing it over a span of 6 months or longer, that allows the audience to explore. Once they understand, you can then explore it.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Let's continue then with Luna. Luna, what was your question?
Sorry about that. I'm on a phone and my bandwidth is very bad.
That's okay.
My question was, do you provide kits for participants that include that notebook that looked really, really cool, and the paper and the grid and everything, or do they provide their own materials?
All material is provided. And that's the part when you're proposing a project like this, it helps to understand that this is a therapy program, or even if it's a craft way to work with students, all material, the book itself and the paper that you'll be using to fold. So a basic material is provided, and if the audience have more crafty paper, like textured paper or pattern paper, so it's one color on one side and a pattern or another color on the other side, it allows them to explore those variations.
That's great. I see this as being wonderful for kids who have dyslexia.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Luna.
Okay, let's continue then. Daniela, your question, please.
Thank you, Gerardo. Thank you, Ashita, for such a great presentation and for sharing with us your process. My question is more about the post-activity part. And I was wondering what kind of metrics do you use to assess the effectiveness the activity had on the participants?
In my practice, while I am hosting the event itself, but it will be the clinic that's measuring the outcome of the therapy program itself. So it's on to if it's a senior care facility or if it is therapy in terms of depending on the age group, the N units of measurement is dependent on how the patient is recovering. And that's why it's a time measured, but that documentation is not shared with me. It's a patient to the facility space.
Okay, thank you.
And to answer it further, the art therapy programs usually have a 17N in terms of the therapy. Dance, drama, music have a different variation. They function differently when it comes to therapy spaces. So the measurement is different.
Okay, great to know. Thank you.
Continuing, Francine, you had 2 questions, so please just share one of them, and I'll call you again when we're back to your second question.
I think the first one was answered already.
Okay, so, perfect.
In the chat, the second one is there was something about double-sided tape, and I figure if you tape double-sided tape on paper, that the front will be sticky, or part of the front of the sticky side of the tape will on top. So what do you do so that that your work doesn't stick to everything?
So I have the tape right here, and
let's see if Ashita was able to come back.
Hi, Gerardo. I'm back.
Wonderful.
But I'm now connected with my mobile phone, so I'm not connected with the device. I apologize. I don't know why that happened. To the last question that we were discussing, there was a mention about questions on the chat. So I haven't had a chance to look at the chat, and I believe the question was answered. And since I'm disconnected from the original call, I can't see the chat at all. That's something I hope that's answered. And coming back to the grids, that's what we were discussing. So where like this is the sticky tape that you're using. So on the sticky side, it allows you to maybe add some elements, just like a textured paper on one side to showcase. That's something that you can bring in. The other option is not to do anything over there. So not to, I guess, complicate the process. The entire process must be simplified and very basic for the participating audience, especially if there are patients that are going through a therapy. While if it's a more fun-oriented craft, then you can bring in a lot more accessories to decorate and make the craft process interesting for the audience.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Ashita. Thank you, Francine, for the question. Let's continue then. Next one was by Monique. Monique, what was your question?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Ashita. Do I understand well that the therapy sessions consist of learning how to fold the letters first, and then all the other sessions are used to fold the words that are the subjects of the session?
And that's a great question. Right here in Houston at the Texas Children's Hospital, previously before the pandemic, a lot of the Origami Houston members have been going and volunteering with the therapy programs with the children right here. And note that this is an extension to our very own practice of origami. So while we ourselves are folding a lot of shapes, objects, and even creating works, we are using it in geometry. When we are working with a set of group, while I'm proposing healing folds as words, in the therapy program, you can fold anything. And that's why in the beginning of when I was presenting the proposal, I'm talking about here is a step-by-step guide on this is a time limit. This is how you can plan it for your age group and audience dexterity, depending on the age group, flexibility, material that they want to use. The program is very, very flexible on how and who you're using it for. You're not limited to words.
Okay, then I understand it, because I'm an occupational therapist in psychiatry, and we're together with my colleague who is an art therapist. And I thought, well, all the sessions only words, that is maybe not so interesting. But when you really combine this way of folding words with the theme and maybe other folds or other techniques in art, then it can be very interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I say that, these collaborations, so one is this extension of the program, and then is the outcome, like what they've created. We want to give them that confidence in what they have created, showcase it. So we don't need a gallery space. It can be even in the foyer. It can be in the walkway.
The windows, etc. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, very nice, very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. That actually extends the future of every project, and it gives it life beyond that time period that I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I actually think we do have time for, I have 2 more in the list, and maybe we have time for 1 or 2 more after that. So if anyone else wants to think of another question while I call the other 2 people, you can go ahead. So next one was, they are both related, one by Annie S. and another one by Linda regarding the length of the letters. So Annie, would you like to go ahead?
Hi, Ashita. It was a little difficult when we were cutting our strips to participate to know what length. And so I was measuring as we made the 8, which you were saying was one of the longest, and it is 18 grids. It's actually 17 in a piece. So you need at least an 18 grid length strip to make the longest one. And I think that's would be very helpful to set the parameters of the materials needed to put this together. So anyway, that's just a comment that I wanted to make.
No, and I completely agree with you, because the entire plan is based on a grid structure. So for the artist who's actually giving the, sharing the instructions, it's helpful to know like at what grid point you're folding. And even in instructions, if one can identify based on this is the third grid where you're folding it into. So that's something that'll go back and add to the presentation. In terms of the material that's being used, so if you're using a paper and you're trimming it down, versus if you're using, let's say, a roll of paper or a ribbon, then the grid is measured with the width of the material that you're using. So those are some things that I can go back and update on the presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was the preparation of the length of what we needed to use was just hanging out there and unknown. So that could be very helpful if it's closely given to us.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, would you like to make your question?
Yes.
Hi there. I think you mentioned that the 8 maybe was the longest piece. So that probably was answered. But could you tell us again how and where we can purchase your book?
I haven't uploaded it to Origami USA. It'll be available for everyone to download from my website as well as Origami USA. Give me some time for, based on the comments that I've received, to go back and edit those information, especially when it comes to the length. And I understand that is important for us as we are practicing it. Like to understand this is where we are trimming it and cutting it. So let me go back and give me some time to do that, maybe a month's time. And once it's available, I'll share that information.
Yeah, I teach origami at the Women's Cancer Support Group at the hospital, and I think this would be a great healing activity to do with the folks in that group. So it's on my agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good to know. How we share.
That's wonderful.
Okay, and just in case, let me remind everyone that you can find Ashita both on Instagram and on her website, and they're basically both the same. Ashita.design. Ashita.design. Okay, and we also have a question by Gita. Gita, please.
I just wanted to know that since you call it a healing therapy, what was the type of progress you noticed when you taught or you had a workshop with seniors or with patients? In what did you observe that how have they progressed, or what changes did you find in them?
The most important part that I've observed is the participation. So the enthusiasm to it's different from the existing therapy. So this is a non-pharmacological therapy space. So there are no medications involved. So we've had music, dance, drama, and these are promoted a lot. And even certain types of art forms are promoted. But origami as a practice is not promoted so much in the healthcare scenario. So that's one. And where we are already promoting our origami as a therapy program, here's another way to look at origami as a practice. So because I myself, being a graphic designer, type design is integral to my practice. And when working with the grid and working in origami, it was a combination that brought the process together. And that's why the healing folds, we are folding. And a disciplined practice brings that forward in everyone. So we all need like a time and a place, just like how we meet monthly with our Foldeas meeting. When it comes to therapy program, patients actually look forward to this space. I've observed that both in seniors as well as in young adults on the themes and the topics that you bring in to Fold. That's what creates more interest. Let's fold our family and friends' names today. Let's fold our, favorite musicians' names today, or objects. And you have to find the right theme or the mood of the audience at that point, what they wish to fold, and that's what creates that connection between the activity and them.
Thank you. Very nice workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Geetaji.
So this is all the time we had for today. Let's please thank Ashita for her presentation. Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
so much, Ashita.
Thank you, Ashita.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gerardo.
Thank you, Ashita. Thank you, Gerardo.
Yes, thank you, Gerardo.
Thank you. I love it.
Ashita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Ashita, thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Gerardo. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Yes. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm not able to accept the chat right here. Oh,
Oh my God.
thank you so much.
Mira, that's like you to do.
You can try Devanagari letters also.
Yeah, thank you. That's so
That's from our
beautiful.
group, our Origami group members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.